Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Eddie Jennings from EJSLLC.com. This video is going to be another in my RHCE practice session series where I'm preparing for the Red Hat Certified Engineer exam. I want to remind you that these videos aren't necessarily intended to be authoritative information, nor are they intended to be tutorials, but rather they're opportunities for me to go over the objectives, talk about them, try to do some examples of them to assess how prepared I am for the exam. And ideally at the end of these videos, I'll think I'm pretty well prepared to take on exam tasks related to the objectives. Otherwise, I'll make note of what I need to be looking at between now and the exam, which is a little bit under 2 weeks away. Before I dive in, I want to thank returning subscribers for watching another video, as well as invite everyone, if you haven't subscribed yet, to click that subscribe button and ring the bell. Also, if you enjoy the video, make sure you click like and feel free to share it with others. This video is going to continue under the Use Ansible modules for system administration tasks that work with, and then there are a variety of things, and we'll be looking at archiving with this video. So the only module that I can think of off the top of my head is the archive module that we would be using for this. And you would think maybe like a tar module and a zip module, but nope, there is only one, at least that I'm aware of, and that is the archive module. So what I'm going to do is let's make a quick little playbook, and we're going to call it archive test.yml. We'll do the needful, give it a name, testing archives. Host, we'll do this on labrel AN03 this time. I don't think I need to become for this in tasks. First, I'm going to create some files. So we'll do name, create a few files in a directory. Actually, I'm going to do a task beforehand. Name, create a directory. We use the file command for that. And let's do path temp archive. And the state is going to be directory. And for our files, we'll also use the file path for that. Path is going to be temp archive test file and then item.txt. We don't have to do .txt, but why not? So the state for these are going to be touch, and we're going to make a loop, and we're just going to use a list of numbers. So we'll make 5 files. 2, 3, 4, 4. It's like the Monty Python sketch. 1, 2, 5, 3, sir, 3. Anyway, so we'll make some files. Let's end this here. Run the playbook real quick. I didn't do a look over for syntax, so hopefully it's going to be accurate. Didn't complain, so let's see what happens here. This should work. Famous last words in IT, right? All right, we'll do an ad hoc command real quick. Do ls temp, then archive, and we have our files. Excellent. So we have some files with which to work. So we're going to do go back into archive test. And we're going to start by just basically tarring and zipping up this folder. Now the curious thing, I did look at some of the stuff with archive beforehand because it's been a while since I've touched this particular module, and that's something that you're probably going to find with your own studies of Ansible, is you're probably not going to be touching every single module that you would touch every single day that you are prepping for the exam. And I think that's okay, because remember, the goal is not that you've memorized a bunch of stuff, but rather the goal is that you're familiar enough, and for some common things you probably have those memorized. Maybe archive, I should consider that a common module and have its stuff memorized, but you would be able to reference it really quickly. It will be different if you didn't know that the archive module was the module to use and you're searching for a tar module or a zip module and all that kind of stuff, versus you know the module and you know where to get some reference stuff if you need it. So we're going to create an archive module. I know that we need to have a destination for this archive, and this, I believe, according to documentation, is just going to be the name of it. So we're going to call it test archive. I'm not going to give it a file extension though, because there's something I want to test with that. Format talks about the type of compression, which I find kind of curious, because you know if you just use the tar command, I mean that will make an archive of stuff, but nothing's going to be compressed. Now if you were to pass it through the -z flag or the -j flag, and I can't remember what the one for xz is, but then you can add compression just all as one thing. But one of the options for format is just tar. So one of the things we're going to try is doing just tar format and see if it will create an uncompressed archive. So, but for this, I'm going to do format gzip. I believe that's a valid thing. And I need to do the path. And the path is going to be tmp archive. And state is going to be present. So I'm going to double check the documentation real quick on archive test, not archive test, on the archive, because I know it's not one I've touched in a while. So destination is going to be the path format. We got that. We're not, the force archive, that's an interesting one because that's for dealing with a single file. And I think this is what makes me think that it'll actually make an archive and then compress it by default if you read that. Path, yep, I was right about that. Not going to worry about file owner and such, nor am I going to worry about SE Linux. There was, I don't see a state, so I may be mistaken about that. Okay, so I'm going to remove state. So I know you have the remove option, but let's see what happens. All right, so we'll do our playbook here. Yeah, I'm just going to type the command. Last video I did, I kept trying to just do the up arrow and I would cause more problems than I solved. I kept doing the ad hoc checking commands I'm going to do. Of course, this is going to show us changed because of the nature of touch. All right, so bzip to gz instead of gzip. That makes sense, just because this is probably appending the file extension to the archive that we're making versus saying it's actually gzip. But again, this is why you do your practice sessions, because these kind of things will start to stick in your head more the more that you do them. And if you were to, gzip something, is going to end with that gz. All right, and actually what I'm going to do, I'm going to try something and see if this will make this run a little bit faster. So for this creating things, I'm going to add a couple of things here. Register result, and this is, we're going to add a changed when result does not equal 0. Other than that, it should be an OK. So let's see how well that works. Nope, that failed. Something I'm probably going to need to review for the exam. Okay, so we created the archive. Let's go ahead and just SSH into lab rel AN03 because I want to check a couple of things. We'll head into the temp directory. We see our archive is there, cd archive. Well, it made it somewhere. So the question is, where did it make the archive? So we're going to try something here. I'm going to do, let's go out of this. And what I'm going to do is, let's register test. That's a totally different thing there. VI archive test. I don't know what I was thinking. I'm just going to get rid of these. I think I know where that ended up. Yep. So, well, let me go ahead and fix name here anyway. So, let us SSH in to here again. There's our test archive. And let's do, what's it? Is it no, it's not info. File, test archive. So gzip compressed data. Okay, and this makes sense because this, that's where the Ansible user would be. So let us do this once more, and we'll put the test archive where we intended, or where I intended for it to be. So archive test. Yeah, I should have known that. For some reason, I was thinking it would do it in the directory where the archive was being made. So we'll just do temp. And I'm actually going to do tgz for this. So we'll run the playbook again. Archive test. And let's see what happens. While I'm waiting on this, that annoys me about the changed when. I'm going to have to practice that a couple of times. So now let's SSH into lab rel AN03. We'll head to the temp directory. And there is our test archive.tgz. So let's do tar. Let's see, ZTF. This should tell us what's in here. And it did not. I thought T was what I need for that. unless it is not actually a tar archive. So let me take a look at gzip real quick. There's a way to see what's been compressed into gzip. I'm not aware of it off the top of my head, to be honest with you. It's a T, G unzip. Well, let's see what happens. Gunzip. Actually, let's make another directory here. Move that into test. Gunzip, test archive tgz. Okay, so that gives us that .tar. I thought it was -t for tar. Let's take a look at that real quick. Yeah, get the names of the things to extract. So let's try this. Tar, or maybe it's capital T is what I need. Test archive .tar. Nope. All right, let's do this then. tar.xvf, and then we'll do test archive.tar. Yeah, something's up. All right, so just to make sure I'm not completely crazy, let's get out of here. arm-rf test, and we're going to tar z vcf archive, and we're going to do archive.tgz. Making all sorts of mental mistakes tonight. Let's try this again. zvcf archive.tgz, and then the archive directory. All right, there we go. And then tar-tf archive.tgz. Okay, so I wasn't crazy. It is -tf for that. Clearly, I did something incorrect with how I used the archive module. So obviously that's something I'm going to need to practice a few times over the next couple of weeks to make sure I have that under my hands. So let's go back into our archive test.yml, format gz, path temp archive, and let's take a look at the documentation, because I'm a little bit baffled as to what I've done wrong. Now, some of you watching the video, you're probably masters of the archive module, and you're going, Eddie, it's obvious this is what you're doing. But alas, at this moment on July 31st, it is escaping me. So on the exam, if this happens to you, really this is all you can do is go to that documentation and see if you can figure it out. Okay, so file name of the destination archive, that's our dest. And then this is required when path refers to multiple files by either specifying a glob or directory with multiple files in a list. Okay, that makes sense. And then let's path, this is glob or paths for the file or files to compress or archive. Okay, so list of file paths. So we can give that a list. That's kind of cool. And then format, you know, we got that, the GZ. All right, so let's archive test. Let's do this then. So we have our format that we make. We're going to do star for that. And I'm going to get rid of the T. Just give a GZ and let's see what happens here. Here's one thing I did want to look at real quick. Format, defaults, GZ. All right, I wasn't sure if you could do like multiple things with that. Ansible playbook, archive test.yml. Okay, so SSH lab rel an03 cd temp /temp. All right, so testarchive.gz is what we have here. So let's do file test. So we have gzip data compressed was temp test archive. Now let's try to do tar.t or ztf for test archive. That's what I expected to see. Now, it's curious that it did not capture the folder, but it captured the files. And I guess that makes sense as far as the specific globbing that I did. So this makes sense. So I would want to do the tgz or .tar.gz. So let's remove this and exit back out. Go back into our archive test. So I do want to do .tgz, and I want to read about one more time in the doc. Of course, there's no doc for the name of my playbook, nor is there for part of my playbook. Absolute path, glob, or list of paths or globs. So I suppose if I wanted to get the actual folder, I could do this. Since it accepts a list, so that's one thing, and then everything in it. So let's see what happens with this. Ansible playbook, archive test. All right, and actually this time I'll just do Ansible ad hoc command, lab rel an03 tar.ztf, and that's going to be temp test archive. Was it test archive that I made? Cat archive test. Yes, test archive. So Ansible lab rel an03 tar.ztf test archive.tgz. No such directory. Okay, so let's just SSH in and see what's going on in that temp directory. I know what I did. I forgot to do the actual path to it. Grumble. I really should probably stop doing practice sessions later at night when I'm tired, but oh well. So now that we're here, ZTF. All right, so that just gave us test file 1 twice rather than giving us the folder. All right, so that's something that I'm going to need to experiment with more, because I could easily see an objective on the exam saying, hey, make an archive of this folder, not just of the contents of this folder. So let's go back into, well, let's go back out of the SSH session, back into our playlist. I want to look at the options one more time for archive. I have exclude path. The mode is going to be just permissions and such. We're not going to really need to deal with attributes with this, or we might, but in my example I'm not going to. We know format. We're not removing anything from the archive. List of paths or globs for the file or files. So this is specifically about files. I wonder if there is a directory archive thing that we would need to know. I suppose not. Okay, so one thing I did want to try real quick was just doing tar instead. So let's do our archive test. We're going to call this test archive2.tar, and we're going to do just tar as the format, and let's see what happens. And there's one other test that I want to try, and then I think I'll be done with this particular practice session. Not done as in this will be the last time that I touch this module, but done as in what I'm wanting to check out. So file, test archive 2. All right, so this is just the tar archive with no compression. Yeah, you can tell that just by the size, even though the TGZ has a little bit of difference in there. So if you want to just make the archive, that would be it. And let's do TF. And that just grabbed the first test file. It's curious that it's grabbing just the first file. I understand why it wouldn't be getting everything because I didn't say star, but it's curious that it just gets the first file out of that rather, the ls archive, rather than just maybe get an empty folder. Not 100% sure what's going on with that. But we are going to make a little change here. Make dir archive subfolder 1, and make dir is going to work better for that. We're going to go ahead and touch a file in that. So archive subfolder 1 test file.txt. All right, so let's go back and go back into our test playbook. We're again going to do the star glob there. We'll do gz, call it test archive 3.tgz, and let's see what happens. So tar ztf test archive 3. So it did not grab recursively for that. So I wonder if there is something else that I should be using for that. Let's look at the doc one more time. I keep saying one more time, but if you're like this on the exam and you're having some issue, oh, I need to go back to my control node. You're having some issue with this not functioning, then you'll just check that documentation again and see if there's something that you're missing. So yeah, this did not go nearly as well as I had hoped with this. obviously a deficiency of mine. Destination, exclude path. There's nothing about recursiveness with this. Absolute path, let's see, that's removing stuff for SC Linux, stuff for unsafe writes, the module unarchive. So compress, directory. All right, so that's doing it without the, maybe that is what I needed. I probably should have looked at examples first. So compress regular file and then remove it. Yeah, the remove I forgot to mention. That is, you'll make the archive and then blow away the original file here. So let's try these without, so glob path excluding the glob of the dir name. Okay, we have exclude paths, that makes sense. The single files where you have to do the force archive. So what I should have done was look through this documentation a bit further. Okay, so let's do one more try of this. So vi archive test.yml, and the path we're going to do just temp archive. We'll do number 4. And while we're at it, because it's always a good idea in troubleshooting to do more than one thing at once, right? Of course, I'm being sarcastic there. Let's see what happens for our last example for this particular video. All right, so let's SSH in. So archive is still there, boo. And let's do tar.ztf, test archive 4, see what happens. All right, so it grabbed the one file and then the subfolder, but not the actual file in the subfolder. Yeah, this is kind of screwy, so I'm definitely going to have to do some more practicing with this. Maybe there's a better module out there. I have to do some research for that. So I would say for this objective, if I took my exam today, I'm probably going to fail on this objective rather than be able to figure it out with the documentation. I mean, I know where the documentation is, I know how to get to it, and I know this is supposedly the module to use, but clearly this is not functioning the way that I would expect it to for just, a lot of these modules are kind of a translation of the command into a module, so this is kind of acting like tar, but it is also not acting like tar in the way that I'm used to. So definitely a fail, definitely more time needs to be spent on it. I do want to thank you for taking the time to watch. Maybe you can glean something from my struggles with this, as far as if you think that you're ready for your RHCE and you run into some of the same issues that I'm running into with the archive module, maybe you yourself need to spend a little bit more time with it. It's one of the reasons why I publish these, because I hope that, even though these are not tutorials, clearly this is not a tutorial in how to use the archive module. I hope it'll be helpful for someone out there that's trying to prepare for their RHCE exam. I do want to thank returning subscribers for watching another video, and I want to encourage everyone, if you haven't subscribed, to click that subscribe button. Not all of my practice session videos are going to be this rough. Some I do pretty well on, I think. Don't forget to click like on the video if you did enjoy it, and also share it with others that might find it useful. Thanks again for taking the time to watch, and I'll see you the next time.